Did Asmongold just expose a major scandal in the gaming world? In a shocking reveal, he uncovers a potential bias in the Game of the Year voting process that has gamers talking. Why are titles like Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, and Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 being pushed aside? Is it really because these games refuse to conform to the woke agenda that's infiltrating the industry? Asmongold's analysis of the voting irregularities raises serious questions about fairness in gaming journalism. What happened to Wukong's vote count that caused a massive drop overnight? And why did IGN erase it from the conversation altogether? Stay tuned as we dive into the scandal, break down the statistics, and expose the truth behind the media's manipulation. This is a must-watch for any serious gamer. Asmongold has brought to light a significant scandal concerning the bias present in the gaming industry's Game of the Year voting process. As various media outlets began inviting fans to vote for their favorite games, it quickly became apparent that the initiative was less about recognizing excellence in gaming and more about advancing certain political agendas and promoting a culture of wokeism. In his usual straightforward manner, Asmongold has highlighted the unfair practices and expressed his discontent with the corruption that has seeped into the gaming industry.
So IGN put out a statement, like, what the f is this here? So this is about our report from last year.
Context.
Written by individuals from the studio that contain multiple references to genitalia and innuendo. This has provoked backlash about some people in the games community, many of whom are women. This is the most retarded article I've ever read in my life.
Context.
That this is something that she's thinking about. See, this is the reason why games journalism is dying. She's focusing on something that nobody cares about. A duel has two different outcomes. That means that the other game should go up proportionally at the same ratio. Oh my god, somebody made a fucking chart. So if you look at the time, 51,000 votes happened within this time period for Black Myth Wukong. And now if you look at Final Fantasy Rebirth, you look at 242 to 245. This is within the same window. But instead of changing by 51,000, it changed by 3,000. And then Helldivers 2, 240, all the way up to 243. So if anything, Black Myth Wukong got negatively botted. And basically every single one of those votes would have been a negative. This means that out of the 51,000 additional duels, the win rate of those additional duels was only 9%, which brought the win rate down from 90% to 72%. And then the thing is, they tweet out, what's your game of the year? And Black Myth Wukong isn't even on the list. It's at 70.7. Now it went back up to 70.9. It just got 5,000 votes and went up by 0.2%. Wait a second. It's possible for it to go down 20%. Dude, this is a degree of shamelessness that I've never seen. I'm almost not even mad at IGN because of how flagrantly ridiculous this is. We just changed all the votes.
The bias is so pronounced that three notable titles, Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, and Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, appear to be intentionally sidelined. These games are often viewed as targets because their developers refuse to conform to the so-called woke narratives that have taken hold of the industry. These studios are not beholden to any quotas or forced messaging. Instead, they focus on delivering a genuine gaming experience. As a result, their titles are systematically excluded from the Game of the Year discussions. Asmongold, one of the most influential streamers globally, has had enough of this trend. He has been vocal in calling out these media outlets for their manipulative strategies, and his efforts have resonated with millions, prompting many to recognize the underlying issues. Among these targets, IGN has come under scrutiny for its role in these controversial practices. Asmongold has been outspoken about how IGN has manipulated the voting process to undermine the chances of Black Myth Wukong in the Game of the Year race. The voting mechanism that IGN set up, which they touted as a fair system, turned out to be anything but. Just a few weeks back, they launched a format where fans could vote in head-to-head matchups between different games, with the overall winner determined by who won the most matchups. However, this approach raised eyebrows as it seemed fundamentally flawed. On the day of the voting, Black Myth Wukong was leading the charge. Then, almost inexplicably, its vote count took a nosedive. In a shocking turn of events, within just 1 hour, a staggering 44,000 new votes appeared, nearly all of which were negative, causing Wukong's winning percentage to plummet from an impressive 90% down to 74%. Meanwhile, the other contenders in the race, such as Final Fantasy VI Rebirth, only saw minimal changes in their vote counts, gaining just a couple of thousand votes. This discrepancy raised significant red flags. Asmongold, ever the keen observer, delved deeper into the statistics and noticed a glaring inconsistency. While Wukong was hemorrhaging votes, the percentages for the other games remained virtually stagnant. This observation led him to rightly conclude that the math didn't add up. If one game loses a substantial number of votes, it stands to reason that the other game should benefit from that loss. Yet the numbers suggested otherwise. Asmongold pointed out the absurdity of the situation, arguing that it's simply impossible for one game to experience such a dramatic drop without any corresponding gain for the others involved. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get any worse, the plot thickened even further. Shortly after Wukong's vote count plummeted, IG conveniently tweeted an update about their Game of the Year vote, excluding Black Myth Wukong entirely. It was as if the game had simply been erased from the competition. But what's behind Ijin's resistance to Wukong's success? The truth is, Black Myth Wukong didn't play by the rules these gaming journalists seem to expect. The game, a remarkable debut from Game Science, shattered records with over 20 million copies sold and set a new benchmark on Steam for the highest number of concurrent players for a single-player title, surpassing even Elden Ring. Gamers worldwide celebrated its quality and innovation. However, this reception didn't sit well with certain media figures who seemed unwilling to acknowledge its accomplishments. The reason? Wukong doesn't conform to the politically correct standards that have become so pervasive in Western media. It doesn't feature forced diversity quotas, politically driven narratives, or the agendas often prioritized by mainstream gaming outlets. A telling episode in this ongoing saga involved the company known as Sweet Baby Inc., which allegedly attempted to pressure Game Science into partnering with them or paying a hefty $7 million. When the studio refused, Sweet Baby reportedly threatened a smear campaign against them. True to form, the backlash from the media was swift. Outlets including AGN took aim at Wukong and its developers, criticizing them for a supposed lack of diversity and for failing to align with the woke agenda. IG even published articles labeling the developers as sexist based on mistranslated remarks attributed to the studio's founder. This smear campaign seemed designed to undermine the game and its creators at every turn. This initial wave of hit pieces soon escalated, with various outlets joining IGN in echoing the same baseless accusations against Black Myth Wukong. It was a textbook smear campaign, and IGN was leading the charge. But they didn't stop with sensationalist articles alone. They resorted to their notorious tactic, twisting a statement from the developer with a mistranslation that only fueled more controversy. Even the most casual observer could see the distortion in these translations, yet IGN ran with it without a second thought. Instead of fact-checking, they hurriedly published these allegations, presenting them as facts. This wasn't just sloppy reporting, it was a calculated effort to discredit Wukong. Fast forward to today, and despite every attempt to discredit it, Black Myth Wukong has soared in popularity, becoming one of the year's most celebrated releases. Its success against all odds was a clear rebuttal to IGN's attempts to undermine it. But accepting Wukong's success seemed too bitter a pill for IGN to swallow. They didn't just stop at articles, they went further by manipulating the Game of the Year poll itself, using underhanded tactics to keep Wukong from claiming the title. However, IGN's actions didn't go unnoticed. Influential streamers like Asmongold saw through their tactics and exposed the truth to the gaming community. As fans rallied, Wukong surged back to the top, reclaiming its rightful place in the spotlight. The backlash against Wukong, though, wasn't confined to IGN. Other platforms, including the Golden Joystick Awards, went so far as to exclude the game from their Game of the Year options entirely. It was as if the industry couldn't handle Wukong's achievements without the approved narratives. Black Myth Wukong wasn't the only game targeted. Two other anticipated titles, Stellar Blade and Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, were also mysteriously left out of awards lists and Game of the Year polls. What linked these three titles? None of them catered to political agendas or the woke narratives often promoted by Western media, which made them prime targets for biased criticism. A striking example is Stellar Blade. The game's director openly discussed his creative choices, pointing out the intense push in the West to prioritize diversity quotas in gaming. He explained that Stellar Blade wasn't about making a social statement, it was a thrilling, action-packed game meant purely for enjoyment. The developers wanted creative freedom to bring their vision to life, free from the restrictive diversity checklist common in Western studios. Journalists, however, seized on this, blowing things out of proportion. Almost immediately, Stellar Blade became a hotbed of controversy, with critics focusing their outrage on the design of the protagonist, Eve. They scrutinized her appearance, calling it unrealistic and harmful to women, despite her design being based on an actual Korean model. Eve's fit and curvy look sparked a backlash that seemed disconnected from reality. Even though Eve was designed with authenticity in mind, media outlets like AGN took issue with the fact that she was an attractive character in a game focused on fun. not on pushing societal ideals. Instead of celebrating the artistry, they criticized her looks, as if a character couldn't be both appealing and empowering. This knee-jerk reaction revealed just how skewed the industry's perspectives have become when it comes to creative expression. These critics seem to prefer an uninspiring, less visually engaging protagonist, but when Stellar Blade went a different direction, they attacked. One particularly absurd criticism: the developers openly admitted they gave special attention to Eve's design, particularly her silhouette and posture, knowing it would be central to the player's experience. Given that Eve would be on screen for most of the game, they aimed to make her appealing to players. The response from fans was overwhelmingly positive. Gamers appreciated the effort. Yet journalists downplayed this, claiming the design choice was merely a desperate attempt to pander to male gamers. The irony is that, in attempting to promote diversity, they actually perpetuated the very biases they claimed to oppose. Many gamers loved the character's design, but the press had already decided to vilify Stellar Blade before it even hit the shelves. And then there's Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. Here, the stakes are equally high. The game's developers have also faced significant backlash, primarily due to the absence of a female protagonist. This decision led to accusations of sexism and misogyny, as various media outlets condemned the choice as backward and indicative of an industry resistant to change. The reality? The developers aimed to create a game true to the lore and universe of Warhammer 40,000. They understood their audience and respected the source material, which centers on a male-dominated narrative. In their view, including a female protagonist would compromise the game's authenticity. Yet again, the media seized on this choice to label the developers as regressive. Critics called for forced inclusivity, demanding that game developers prioritize diversity even when it contradicted established lore. In a culture obsessed with identity politics, the idea of creative freedom has taken a backseat to an agenda-driven narrative. As Asmongold continues to voice his concerns, it's clear that the conversation around bias in gaming journalism isn't going away anytime soon. The gaming community is watching, and as more players become aware of the underlying issues, they are demanding accountability from the media outlets that shape their gaming experiences. As the dust settles, one thing is certain: the bias present in the Game of the Year voting process has exposed a troubling trend within the industry. Asmongold's revelations have sparked an important conversation, urging gamers to scrutinize the media they consume and to question the motivations behind the narratives being pushed. Are we as a community willing to stand by while our favorite games are marginalized? Or will we hold the media accountable for their biases? The choice is ours. Thank you for tuning into Movie Saga. If you found this discussion enlightening, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for the latest updates on all things gaming and entertainment. Join us next time as we dive deeper into the issues affecting our beloved gaming community and explore the stories behind the games we play. Until then, keep questioning, keep gaming, and we'll see you in the next video.